Welcome to The Outlet, an NBA podcast hosted by Nick Fay and Corey Waldron.
On this episode of The Outlet, I'm joined by Alex Goldberg to recap Game 3 of the Eastern Conference Finals. As always, you can find The Outlet on all streaming platforms. Enjoy the show. All right, Game 3 just wrapped up. Celtics pick up their first one of the series, 117-106. Now, series is looking Miami 2-1. Alex, how are we feeling about the Celtics after this win?
It seems a little cliche to say, but I think that even though he didn't score a ton of points, Gordon Hayward was a huge contributor to this win. He managed to play good minutes. He got 6 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. He was solid on the defensive end. And most importantly, I think he provided real impact minutes that would have otherwise gone to end of the bench guys like Semi Ojeleye or Enes Kanter. And he held his own in those minutes. So that's a big turnaround from the previous 2 games. And one thing to certainly take away.
Yeah, I thought Hayward's impact was huge, especially against that zone defense. He kind of gives him that stability, another playmaker, somebody who's comfortable coming to the elbow, shooting a mid-range shot, or just making that extra pass to kind of keep things moving. Like you said, filling in for, instead of, Semi Ojeleye, even Brad Wanamaker's minutes were down a little bit. So I think Hayward, too, as the series progresses, he's going to get more comfortable, get some more shots up like that. But, I guess let's talk about the end of the game and how, Boston allowed Miami to really have a shot to get back into it. Is this, a real issue for them the rest of the series and a concern you have about them, closing out games, given they were up, 20 at one point in this one?
So Boston has consistently struggled throughout the year to kind of put games away in situations that are pretty winnable. But I think there's something to be said for the fact that with Gordon Hayward back in the fold, Brad Stevens can now afford to go a little bit deeper and play dudes like Grant Williams and Daniel Tice kind of later into games where they would otherwise lose steam or be in foul trouble, as they have been in the previous 2 games. And he can kind of mix up lineups to adjust to Miami's scheme, which has so far been exceptional, and really kind of play off of that. So, I think it's a little simplistic to say, and obviously the Celtics could have done more to put this game away earlier, and they still are going to need to adjust to kind of put these games away more effectively going forward. But I do think that with the additional bodies and with the additional freshness that Grant Williams, Daniel Tice, and Brad Wanamaker get just from Hayward having that extra 20 minutes in, that's going to be very important to kind of sealing up the leaking holes that kind of seem to come for the Celtics throughout the season. And I think it's a step in the right direction. Obviously, Miami is a super tough, super disciplined team. They're going to fight you for a full 48 minutes. But with Hayward back in the lineup, I think that's going to be a big step towards kind of righting those rotations and making sure that the Celtics are at their best when it matters most.
Yeah, I think being able to match up is huge. And like you said, getting a guy like Hayward back. And then I also think Jaylen Brown being aggressive provides more balance for the offense. And it felt like, Kemba was able to be that third option and let the offense come to him. And that's when he was at his best. And he really hit a lot of big shots that were ending Miami's runs. They had these 11-1, 12-2, whatever it was. It felt like Kemba was able to step up, hit a big 3 when needed. But let's talk about Jaylen Brown, who came out aggressive from the start in this game. And you could tell not only offensively, but defensively, he was out there to kind of send a message. Maybe to his own teammate, Marcus Smart, who, they had words after the game.
Well, Jaylen Brown, the Celtics have, in a lot of ways, been dictated this year by how well Jaylen Brown plays. Obviously, Jason Tatum has emerged as a true 2-way superstar, and Kemba Walker is obviously going to give you those points that you need down the stretch. But ultimately, the Celtics, in a lot of ways, their season has been determined by how Jaylen Brown is able to step up in these games. And this has easily been his best game of the series. And in the previous series against Toronto, The games that the Celtics did the best in were also the games that Jaylen was most engaged in, both on offense and defense. I think the thing that Jaylen really adds to this team that other dudes are kind of not able to replicate is he's so aggressive in transition. When he's able to get stops, get rebounds, and really push the pace and take it to the rack in a way that, Jason Tatum has obviously gotten better around the rim, but I think Jaylen is certainly a more aggressive finisher. And
he just has more of an attack in him. When you watch Jaylen Brown go at the rim.
I think as long as Jaylen continues to attack and stay aggressive, the Celtics have a good chance to get back in the series.
Yeah, and I thought he did a better job today, especially with the zone, making proper cuts or seeing those one-on-one situations. And like you said, when he's attacking, given his athleticism and his strength, you even saw him score over Bam a couple times. It's just something that offense really needs to kind of add more balance and a different dynamic. Did you think, Boston's defense turned it up tonight, or was it just a little bit of Miami missing shots?
I think it was some of both. I think that Jaylen and Tatum in particular were a little more aggressive in trying to break up passes.
Yeah.
I thought that they also did a much better job of closing out on Miami's shooters. Tyler Hero definitely got hot, and he's going to continue to do so. And I'm always going to be sad about the fact that the Celtics did not get a chance to draft him. But that being said, I think they did a much better job of closing out on shooters and also disrupting Jimmy Butler's momentum towards the basket, which is something that's killed the Celtics in the first two games. I think a lot of it is just keeping that pressure on their ball handlers, switching on screens. And I don't want to keep coming back to this, but adding Hayward back into that lineup really allows the Celtics to play a more switchable style of defense, which I think is going to really matter to them. But ultimately, I do think, Miami definitely had some looks. I think Jay Crowder in particular, who has been really big for the first two games, struggled
2 of 10
tonight.
from 3.
And I think that was a huge factor in contributing to the Celtics win. They did a better job closing out on three-point shooters, and in particular, getting rebounds, which is going to be huge for them going forward. They really need to crash the glass. But all things being equal, I think it was a mix of both. I think they did play better on the defensive end, but Miami also missed some shots, and they're going to keep coming. So the Celtics have to stay disciplined on that end.
Yeah, I thought they did a better job defensively. I think, Brad Stevens put Kemba Walker on Jay Crowder, got Marcus Smart on Goran Dragic. I think that started disrupting things early on. And like you said, I thought the closeouts were a little bit better. I thought in comparison to game 2, they did a better job with Duncan Robinson early in this game, not letting him score, 9 points in the first 3 minutes and really kind of throwing off the flow. And then also, they did finish with, I believe, 14 turnovers, but it felt like most of them were in the second half, where in that game 2 and that game 1, a lot of those live ball turnovers allowed Miami to get things going. And I think, a big factor too, Boston turned up that transition defense a little bit, forced Miami to get into some of those stagnant half-court sets. And like you said, disrupting some of that penetration, be it Jimmy Butler, be it Goran Dragic, whoever it was. And they kind of were like, you know what, we'll let Bam Adebayo beat us. And Bam put up points, but at the end of the day, it wasn't really necessarily making the rest of the team better.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a viable strategy going forward for the Celtics. Adebayo has been terrific this series, and considering both the block and just the fact that he's been all over the glass and really pushing it against Daniel Tice, I think the Celtics are going to have trouble guarding him going forward. But much like they have in previous series with Joel Embiid and with Kyle Lowry, I think there's something to be said for kind of letting him get his and just closing out on the other guys and making sure to disrupt their rhythm as much as possible. I do think that next game is definitely going to be a dogfight. I imagine that Miami will be trying really hard. And, I have a lot of respect for their system and their team, and for Eric Spoelstra in particular, who has done a great job coaching. But I think that the Celtics found some stuff here that they can work with going forward. I also I really do want to shout out, I think Grant Williams has been superb throughout the playoffs. He's really
The fact
stepped
he
up to
popped off the
emerge.
bench and just hit a three like instantly, that was crazy, especially for a rookie. And you love the energy he brings. He was mic'd up tonight, obviously. And I think, a rookie coming in with the basketball IQ that he has is really impressive. And like you kind of mentioned earlier, allows him to play more switchy. And that kind of helps prevent Bam on some of those rolls that they hit in that first half. But moving into game 4 and the rest of the series, do you feel a lot more confident about Boston attacking the zone? Like obviously they struggled game 1 and game 2, but it felt like tonight they were able to find those holes, attack the gaps.
I definitely think that with Hayward on the floor, it's going to be easier for them to attack the zone. I also think that Spoelstra is, in my mind, probably the best coach in the NBA. So he is going to make adjustments, and the Celtics are going to have to be ready to respond to that. But I think with Hayward on the floor, that adds a level of dynamic ball movement to their offense that will break that zone down a little bit more. And I think particularly so I think the biggest thing for the Celtics this series is that in the first 2 games, they really did not do a great job in the third and fourth quarter stopping Miami's shooters and their penetration. It starts on the defensive end for the Celtics this series. And I think if they can continue to fluster Miami and force them into hard shots or into getting, kind of dudes who are less threatening offensively to take those shots, I think that the Celtics are going to have a better time. So long story short, keep defending. If you have Hayward on the floor, I think that there will be better results against the zone, but the defense is the priority. And as long as they keep defending, I think they'll have a decent shot.
And especially a guy like Jaylen Brown, who I felt like just brought an extra level of tenacity. Obviously, you're always going to get that with Marcus Smart, but those other guys. And, we're not going to spend a lot of time on Tatum. We'll just give him a quick shout out of just, I think, when you're still having a giant impact on the game and you're not dropping 35 points, that's when you're really taking those steps in stardom. The 14 rebounds, the 8 assists, being under control, just providing that really positive factor for the team. But let's talk Miami a little bit. Jimmy Butler, 17 points, 6 of 13, 5 of 6 from the free throw line. You really just didn't even feel Jimmy Butler most of this game, especially in the first half. Is this a Jimmy Butler problem, or is this Boston kind of slowing him down?
Well, I think in the first 2 games, what really stood out to me about Jimmy Butler's performance is not necessarily how he did in the first 3 quarters, but that he was the takeover guy for Miami in the fourth. In the first 2 games, there were multiple possessions where he would get a switch on somebody like Jason Tatum and just drive on him and score critical buckets down the stretch or hit corner threes. And I think this Miami team thinks of Jimmy Butler as their closer. They think of him as the guy who needs the ball in those critical possessions. And I think the Celtics did a good job of adjusting to that and adjusting to the fact that they knew that Jimmy was going to be the guy down the stretch and holding him in check. I think that Miami is probably going to try and make some adjustments, but ultimately Jimmy Butler, and this has been true of them all season, when it comes down to nut crunching time, so to speak, Jimmy Butler is that dude. Yeah. And I think the Celtics have done at least in this game, did a better job of anticipating that. We'll see how they adjust going forward, but Miami will need to find at least a few other options, and it might be Tyler Hero, who has been exceptional all series long, but Miami is going to need to find some other options in those critical fourth quarter situation, because I think the Celtics are going to adjust and do their best to contain Jimmy Butler, who has been superb for that period.
And I think it's kind of Jimmy Butler, too, being like, hey, if Boston's going to shut me down in the fourth quarter, maybe I need to get mine in the first, second, and third, especially when they're having those scoring slumps. At times, you'd like to see Butler come in and just be like, all right, let me get 2 free throws or get you this bucket, whatever I can. Because, Tyler Hero stepped up, but you can only, ask so much of this rookie. He's already been incredible, and I can't really recall a rookie who's played this well in the postseason given the workload that he's had. And it didn't help that Goran Dragic had maybe his worst game of the postseason, 11 points, 2 of 10 from the field, 1 of 5. A lot of credit to Marcus Smart there, but he also was just kind of missing some of the shots we saw him hit earlier in the series. Anything else on terms of the Miami side that you think is going to change going to game 4, other than obviously the energy and toughness picking up a little bit, scheme-wise?
I think one thing that surprised me about this series is that we haven't seen a ton of Andre Iguodala, who I thought played really well against Milwaukee. I wouldn't be surprised if Miami spends more time trying to get him involved early. He seems like an interesting wrinkle that could fluster some of the Celtics wing ball handlers, particularly Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. But it's possible that they don't want to risk having somebody like Iggy, who is a so-so shooter, if we're being honest.
Yeah, I mean, the Celtics put Cantor on him. Like, that's, yeah. I mean, if there's any more disrespect than that in this, then I don't really know what is, you know what I mean? So,
yeah, no, that's a good point. And so I think it's possible that they might throw more Iguodala. I also have liked Derek Jones in the limited minutes that he's played so far, but he needs to assert himself a little more as an offensive threat and really attack the rim. I'm not sure that the Celtics have a ton of counters for somebody like Derek Jones, but I think in situations where Jones plays heavy minutes, you could see maybe more of Grant or Robert Williams on the floor. Brad is kind of hit or miss when it comes to Robert Williams, so it's really kind of going to be a feel-out process. But I think Miami definitely has a few adjustments that they could make. And, as I said before, I really do think Spoelstra is one of, if not the outright best coach in the NBA. So he's going to have more stuff for Game 4, and Boston will need to be ready to adjust. But
he'll do some tinkering.
Yeah. But it is a confidence-building win for the Celtics, and I think they really needed this after those first two games to reestablish themselves in this series. When I kind of previewed the Eastern Conference Finals, I had Boston in 7, and those first two games certainly shook my faith in that. But winning here, I think the Celtics have a chance to reestablish themselves. So
I think the fact that Hayward came back and provided such an impact gives you confidence. And just talking about some of those adjustments for Miami, this is where it gets tricky, is because they could play Iggy a little bit more. They can play Derek Jones Jr., but how much is that hurting the offense, which, has struggled really at points in the series, especially when Boston turns it up. So that's where it gets kind of intriguing. Kendrick Nunn at this point almost seems unplayable, just not in rhythm, obviously a rookie player. And he got matched up with Kemba a couple times, and it was just, barbecue chicken out there. So we'll see what happens. But Game 4, hit me with your predictions.
I think that the Celtics are going to even the series in Game 4 and make it a best of 3. I think that Hayward is going to take a couple of games to adjust to. And frankly, he played well, but he certainly could play better. And I think more importantly, perhaps they really found something with Jaylen Brown and got him aggressive and attacking early. I think it's going to be a dogfight. I don't think it's going to be, the Celtics won this game. It was a little closer than I think the score actually reflects. I think that the Celtics were pretty in control for most of the fourth quarter. I think next game is going to be tougher. I like the Celtics' chances, though, with Hayward back. And I think that they're going to make it 2-2 and push it to a 3-game series. So we'll see.
Given I picked the Celtics in 7-2, I'm hoping that Boston can win Game 4. I think it'll come down to being a close game, and I think maybe Jason Tatum gets revenge. We saw him get that block by Bam in Game 1. This is his chance maybe in Game 4 to hit that game winner, have those clutch shots, because I think part of Miami's adjustment, especially if Jaylen Brown maintains his aggressiveness, is going to be having to give him more attention. And, Kemba Walker, if he's consistently playing well too, things are going to start to open up for Jason Tatum a little bit, and this could be, one of those monster Tatum performances from a scoring perspective, not just the rebounding, the assists, and the defense.
Yeah, and I just want to throw one more thing in there, which is that the Celtics actually have 4 days off.
Yeah, it's so weird. So weird.
Yeah, because of a weird scheduling kink, the Celtics are next going to be playing on Wednesday, which I think is actually great for them because it'll give Gordon Hayward a chance to rest up and really continue to recover from that ankle injury that he sustained in Philly. I wouldn't be surprised if his minutes are increased going forward. And I think that the Celtics, given that they went through an absolute bloodbath against Toronto in the previous round, they really needed this rest. So I think that's going to be big for them.
And I think it's a little bit easier for Boston in terms of like if they're playing on Monday, Miami be ready to go, like get revenge. That little break kind of puts momentum in the entire series and kind of almost allows them to prepare, like you said, with the whole Gordon Hayward thing. And depending on the different adjustments, it's going to be a chess match, obviously, the rest of the way through. Brad Stevens, Eric Spoelstra, two of the best coaches in the NBA. But Alex, appreciate you hopping on the outlet for the first time. Big thanks everybody for listening. You can catch us on all streaming platforms.
Absolutely. Happy to be here. And I would love to come back. Go C's.